Coming up next on The Health Hustle.
I went to school to become a nutritionist, but I didn't really learn the habit coaching preventative stuff that I know now. So in taking a precision nutrition course and learning how to start a business and coach people that way, I learned tools that help myself. And I also read a book called Never Binge Again, which made it stop overnight.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What was the punchline from that book that really clicked for you?
The guy who wrote it, his name's Dr. Glenn Livingston, he comes from a family of 20 different psychiatrists. And he had struggled with binge eating, I believe, for 30 years. And everything that he had learned in school to become a doctor, it's inner child work, it's this. He decided, none of that shit works. I'm going to go against the grain. And he developed this theory that he had a pig that lived inside of him. And all this pig cared about was binging. And this pig is not an actual farm animal, but it's our lizard brain, which all of us have. And it's it's the most underdeveloped part of our brain that only cares about eating things, killing things, and having sex with things. And it's very impulsive and it's very hard to control. And so he realized that when he stopped listening to the pig squeal and caged the pig, that he would stop eating pig slop. And so I realized that all I had to do was just cage that pig and I wouldn't binge eat anymore.
How do you cage the pig?
In your mind, you realize that that's his only mission. And the more you listen to him, the more pain you feel.
Hey folks, and welcome to the Health Hustle of Austin, Texas. On this show, we uncover the big ideas from your fellow health and fitness entrepreneurs in the Austin, Texas area about how they built their business and the lessons they learned along the way. I'm your host, Corey Hibben, and on this episode, I had a chance to sit down with Krista Nicole Large. In the beginning of this episode, it sounds like her entrepreneurship journey started at a rave, but believe it or not, it had more to do with reptiles. Definitely stay tuned for that. Some of the things that we get into are her love story at a rave event, her experience working out at Onnit Gym as a personal trainer, why she decided to create a list of 100 life goals, the mistakes she made when starting her nutrition business, the advantage of growing a newsletter early, her personal challenges with eating and overcoming her inner pig, her words, not mine, the power of accountability, an incredible rapid fire round, I actually think it was probably one of the best ones yet, her best business advice, and so much more. Without further ado, let's go! Krista Nicole Large, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I am open-minded and ready to explore.
Well, that's exactly what we're going to do.
Okay.
Because before we started recording, we kind of tapped into the origin of your story of entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. And it seems to have started at a rave.
Yes.
Can we talk about that?
Where all love begins. Yeah, we can chat about it.
So tell me more about that. So this was the seed that was planted for you of even thinking entrepreneurship was a thing? Tell me more.
I say it started at a rave because that's where I ended up meeting my current boyfriend. Mm-hmm. And this is almost 8 years ago. So out of college, I just wanted a job. I didn't want to go back to school I didn't want to pursue more of an education. So I ended up taking a job in a corporate company as a document control specialist.
Sweet.
Which is exactly what it sounds like. And tried to climb the corporate ladder for a oil and gas company. And was bored out of my mind, of course. So booked tickets to Ultra Miami Music Festival, was recently single and didn't think I would meet somebody that I would spend 8 years of my life with.
Dang.
Yeah, but we locked eyes and that was Eric. And he was a miles and points travel hacker. Wasn't necessarily doing anything illegal by any means, but did not follow the status quo when it came to jobs. And I'd never really heard, I heard of people doing their own thing, but he was my first introduction to somebody actually being an entrepreneur.
That is interesting. So did he introduce himself hey, I'm Eric, I'm a travel hacker?
Actually, I heard him on the phone speaking like he was a travel agent, like asking for like certain routings and like he had his own way of getting home that day.
Sure.
And he made it happen.
So that was the start of you meeting this human that obviously brought entrepreneurship into your life.
Yes.
Let's move into that a little bit. So then you guys started dating. That's interesting. So did you connect on the fact that you're both from Texas and then you knew like, hey, we could hang out later, or how did that happen?
Yeah, interesting. So at the time I was living in Houston, he was living in San Diego. We both happened to travel to Miami for the concert.
Right.
And didn't know each other prior.
So you guys were like dating at this point? Or
no.
Like, okay,
no.
just had met it.
We had just met each other.
Okay.
I wasn't even sure he's still on my phone as Eric ? Because when you like think it's somebody and you're like, who's this person? Mm-hmm. He was a guy that, we were dancing, it was on his shoulders, we're like making out. I was like, oh, I'm never going to see this guy again. But I did.
Okay. Well, tell me more. I want to know, how did this circle back to no longer becoming a question mark in your phone? Like, how did you guys actually connect afterwards?
Yeah. So we had met the night before Ultra started at a concert called Above and Beyond, who we both loved. And like I said, we spent the night together, like till 5 a.m., dancing on each other. And then he left. And then that's when I didn't have his number saved. He ended up surprising me 3 days later at Ultra Music Festival. And of course, I would happen to be dressed like a freaking mermaid, a rave mermaid. But he knew there was a strong connection between us, and I liked him too. And so it was a really pleasant surprise. And then we ended up spending that whole third day together as well. And then just kept in contact over the summer. And
so you had this awesome experience in Miami.
Yes.
With Eric.
Yeah, Prince Eric.
Okay. I was envisioning him being like Aquaman or something, but like if you're a mermaid, he's Aquaman. I don't know why I thought that, but yeah. So you guys had this amazing experience in Miami, and then you guys probably parted ways.
We parted ways.
You went back to California, you came back to Houston. Mm-hmm. How did things move forward from there then?
So because we were such big Above and Beyond fans, we decided, okay, this group, every year, it's these 3 DJs, and they all play together, but only one time per year. And it's called ABGT, which stands for Above and Beyond Group Therapy. And every year, it's in a new city somewhere in the world. Well, we had made a pact that wherever it happened to be, we would go together. So they announced it a few weeks later after we met, and it happened to be in Sydney, Australia. And it was just this defining moment of oh, wow, I did not think it was going to be across the world.
Right.
But we had made this commitment to each other, and of course, really, we're into each other, and ended up going to Australia for our second date.
Okay. That is an intense second date.
Yeah, for 10 days together, but
I'm lucky to get a girl to go to coffee twice, to go to Australia. That's pretty impressive. Okay.
Yeah.
He must have had an effect on you, obviously.
Yeah.
Now that we've kind of positioned ourselves of like being a serious couple, it sounds like at this point, when did you guys actually come together as like a couple and decide to like live in the same state together?
So I moved to Austin pretty shortly after him and I met. And so I knew that I wanted to be here. I honestly had trouble making friends in Houston, which is the whole reason I moved here. And so I lived here for about 2 years before he came. And he would just visit me, and I would visit him in San Diego.
Did he decide to move here because of the relationship, or why did he decide to come here?
Yes, because of that. And then he knew he wanted, Austin was one of his places that he was drawn to as well.
For anybody listening to the show, this isn't a show about dating, but I feel like this is an important part of your story of like how a lot of this stuff started as to what you kind of do here today.
Yeah.
Just to give people context. Because like Eric, if anybody doesn't know who he is, basically he does a lot of like float tank stuff and sauna and cold plunge and total athlete. So was he doing float stuff before he was coming to Austin, or did that start here?
So interesting enough, I used to work for a company that had part ownership in a float spa. And I, as an employee benefit, I had free floats or really cheap floats. I actually introduced him to floating, and he ended up loving it so much that he decided to open his own float spa.
Yeah, because last time I talked to him, he's the most diehard float guy I think I've met yet.
Yes. Yes.
And that's saying a lot because I feel like I've met a few of those guys. But was this the seed that was planted for you of like thinking that you could start your own business, of like when he decided to start his own practice? Or like where do you feel like that started for you of like maybe I could start my own business as opposed to working in this company in Houston?
Yes. Actually, so what made me want to start my own business is I had to basically break myself in half with how much I would allow my body to go through. At the time, I was a personal trainer. And so I worked this ridiculous schedule of like waking up at 5, not going to bed until 10, and having clients and classes, and was also powerlifting, and I had a part-time job as a stretch therapist, and I was also renting my apartment out on Airbnb at the same time. So I had like all of these jobs to try and make ends meet, and was still broke and just really tired. I thought I was 29 and invincible and I can handle anything. And I just had this breaking point of, oh my God, nothing could be harder than what I'm doing right now. I should just do my own thing. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people could resonate with that of trying to balance a lot of things. Do you feel like, what did you learn from deciding to go from juggling all these things to essentially starting your own thing and starting your own business? Was like, what was like the learning curve in between there? Because like that's hard for a lot of people, right? I feel like a lot of people deal with that of like maybe they are working a job and they're also doing a side hustle and they're also trying to work out and they have a relationship and et cetera, et cetera. Like, how did that transition look for you, and like what did you learn from it?
Yeah, interesting. I've given a speech on this before because it was so vivid the way that it happened. I found a podcast by the name, his name is Sebastian Terry, and he has this whole movement called 100 Things. And I was listening to it, and it's this man, and he basically at the age of 24, he had lost one of his really good friends. And in that moment, you evaluate things in life. And he had asked himself this question, am I happy? And his answer was no. And he was really lost, of course, at 24. He didn't know what he wanted to do in his life, but he at least knew that he wanted to like do this and this and this and this. And so he started creating this list of 100 life goals that he wanted to achieve in his lifetime. And for me, I felt like I knew that personal training was not it for me. And so I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to start my own list. So as an exercise that night, I went home and just stream of consciousness, just started writing things down on this sheet of paper. Goal number 1 was ride in a hot air balloon, and then, learn a new language, and it just kept going on and on. Well, it was my 29th birthday, and I got a break. My mom and I ended up going to Sedona, Arizona. And it was my first weekend away from working in the gym. And I remember just laying there, and I wake up on my birthday, and the sun's coming up over the mountains. And I see this little speck of something like rising up over the mountains. I was like, oh my God, it's a hot air balloon.
No way.
Yeah. And so like went and woke up my mom. I was like, oh my God, there's a hot air balloon. We gotta go. And so I ended up riding on that hot air balloon. And I felt like it was just a wink from God saying, go live your life. Like, you're the creator of your life. You can change things if you want to. And it happened to be the number one thing on my list for no reason. Well, I forgot to mention earlier, but one of those other things on my list was be your own boss. And so as soon as I had seen that and just kind of stepped into this creator position, I was ready to take that on. And I actually put in my 2 weeks notice as soon as I got back from that trip.
Moving very quickly. I love this idea of just like the story mindset. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I don't even remember who it was, about how just trying to live your life with more intentions of just like telling a great story. Oh, it was actually Dr. Scott. I was talking to you on this last episode about how he always says like, just do it for the story, right? Like, one of my best friends says like, live a life worth telling a story about. And I think a lot about that because like it just brings so much more joy to your life of like, you're not trying to accomplish something, you're just living an interesting life and trying to have fun along the way, essentially.
Yeah.
On that list, I know I've heard you talk about a few of the things that were on that list, but like of all the things that you've accomplished so far at this point, which one would you say was the hardest or the most fulfilling, I guess?
So one of the things on my list was to go a year without alcohol. And I will be 11 months in a couple days.
Okay, so this one you have to accomplish at this point. Like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
At this point.
Your friend offered me a shot of vodka earlier. I was like, oh, nah.
Oh, man, I'm going to tell him that, actually.
Yeah.
She's 11 months sober, bro. Can we not offer her vodka at this point?
Yeah. The craziest thing on that one, I never, and I say this very humbly, I never realized how smart I am until I stopped drinking alcohol.
Interesting. Like your brain just is clear. You just think better. You make better decisions. I mean, obviously that makes sense, but.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I just feel like, I don't know. I started at a young age with alcohol. I probably got introduced to it like 15 or 16 years old, and then you go to like college, and then it's just a part of your life, and you just kind of get used to it being around. And I would say that kicked in for me at around 6 months. I want to study, I learn, I retain so much more, and maybe it's in part the sleep, but yeah, I'm like, wow.
No, I totally get it. I realized, I was thinking about that for the last like couple of weeks now, about how when you realize how good you could feel, you don't want to go back.
Yeah.
We just had our meetup yesterday, and I was talking to a friend about that, and I'm so lame now, where I was invited to this like light show party at Mozart's, I think it is.
Okay, yeah.
And they're like, yeah, it's at like 9 p.m. And I'm so lame that I'm like, that's like past my bedtime.
I know. Same.
That's literally the first thing that went through my brain. It's like, chill out, Corey. Like, you could go out one night and have a good time. Like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I recognize that if I don't get a good night's sleep, or like if I'm just not eating healthy, or if I'm not moving regularly, I know how I feel, and I don't like it. So I totally can resonate with that.
We're so high maintenance.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yes. What was the second one then?
Yeah. On that note, so I'm learning a new language, Spanish, and that's been, I would say, the most rewarding thing I've ever set out to accomplish.
How is it? Can you share any Spanish with us?
Sí, puedo. Well, right now I would say I'm like 21 months in. And the coolest thing about it is it's all one-on-one instruction. I have a professor that lives in Colombia, and it's $20 a class. And I would say it's been the greatest form of accountability for me. There's weeks that go by, like the last thing that I want to do is stop work in the middle of the day, turn on Zoom, and speak Spanish for 45 minutes. It's so taxing.
Totally.
But because I have this Colombian guy on the other end of the camera who's like just as excited about my results as I am about my results, and I'm paying for it, like I show up, and I do about 12 classes a week. I've spent over $5,000 trying to learn. And at this point, if I quit, I'm pretty much just flushing all that money and time down the drain. So,
totally. Because that's a use it or lose it type of thing too, where like you're learning Spanish.
Yes.
Have you learned anything? We don't have to get too into it because I do want to get back to your personal journey. But just really quickly, have you learned anything about yourself by learning another language? Because I've always thought a lot about how, as the English language is so limited on vocabulary, that it also limits our emotions and the way we like experience the world. By learning this new language, have you been able to feel like you experience the world more, or how has that changed things?
Wow, what a great question. Yeah, for sure. So back to the list. And the whole reason why I'm learning a new language is when I've quote unquote made it in life, I imagine myself at this beautiful place in this foreign country where people speak Spanish, and I'm just in this hammock, and I'm looking at this house, and it's something I bought from my business alone, and I'm so proud of it, and I just feel so fulfilled, and I live there part-time of the year, and there's mountains, and I can ride my bike, and there's ocean, and I'm tan. I dream about that day every single day. And so I'm working to save money for this house, and I'm also learning this language. That way I don't get ripped off when I buy this house. And I could speak the language and really be part of the culture. So I would say, if anything, it's a manifestation practice.
That's very intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have this vision, and now you're just essentially putting the stones of the building in place to build this vision that you've created for yourself.
Yeah.
Create a life you don't need a vacation from, as they often say. I think about that one a lot as well. Seth Godin coins that one, if you know who that is. Great marketer. Check him out if you haven't checked him out.
I have.
Yeah.
Purple Cow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's written like at least over a dozen books. That was one of his original ones. But thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I digress. I want to get back to kind of your personal journey into this, where you are today. So you have this list of goals. You have these things you want to achieve. You realize that you didn't want to be a personal trainer. What were the next steps for you then to actually make that leap into doing your own thing? Like you said, you put in 2 weeks. Then what? What did you do?
Yeah, I did everything ass backwards. I, of course, started a website and pretty much hired one of my friends who was getting into web design. I was like, hey, can you make me a website? She's like, yeah, what are you going to do for your packages? And I was like, I don't know, this, and this. And honestly, I got business cards next before I'd even got a customer.
Got a logo.
A logo.
Yep.
Yeah.
You were playing business, as they say.
Exactly.
Got it.
I posted a picture of my business card on Instagram, and I was like, hey, I'm, living large wellness now. And actually ended up getting a bunch of people reach out to me. And this was pre-COVID, a few months, and ended up closing 3 sales in one day.
What?
Yes. I had like my 15-minute phone call. I don't know, it was just really good luck right off the bat. And then, I started my business February 5th, and then COVID happened on March, whatever.
You weren't online at this point? You were in person, or what were you doing?
I was online.
You were online?
Yeah.
Okay, so that timing worked out nice.
Timing worked out.
What would you contribute that to? I feel like, because I'm sure there's probably people listening, like curious as to why. Do you think it was just like the relationships you'd already built up with these people, or what do you think it was?
Yeah, walk the walk. I think when people see that you live the life that they want to live, they trust you.
So you were probably already talking and posting about nutrition and health and fitness and all that stuff.
For sure, because I was working at the gym, and so
you worked at On It, right?
Oh yeah, I worked at the On It gym. Yeah.
Okay, so you had a little clout, I would say.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, an On It trainer. She must know what she's talking about.
Yes.
Okay. So what would you have done differently then in that earlier stages if you were to start over again?
Honestly, I wouldn't have done anything differently.
Okay.
No, it allowed me to stop, not get caught in this needs to be perfect. I was like, all right, this is already here, and I'm going to manipulate it along the way.
Totally.
It's a matter of logging in.
So how did you continue to grow from moving forward then? So you had 3 clients. You started coaching them.
Yeah. So in the interim between quitting my job at the gym, I also worked as a stretch therapist for a company called Stretch Lab. And so, interesting enough, I had plotted out, because I knew living large, I was going to take it to be my full-time thing. I created this whole Excel document of an exit strategy of how many stretches I needed to do per week, how many clients I needed to get. And I had this whole list ready. And then the pandemic happened. And so I didn't really freak out. I mean, of course, the state of the world had me. But in terms of what I needed to do, I had it there. So I was like, let's go.
I've already built this.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, I don't want to say I had it easy, but in a way, in the nutrition space, there's no company happy hours. Everybody's cooking their own food. People are moving around. There's no distractions. So I got really insane testimonials right off the bat, because this is people's only focus.
What would you say was the biggest needle mover for that? Was it referrals? Was it the content that you were creating? Was it advertisements you were running?
No, I've never run ads at this point. Content I was creating, I would say, via Instagram. An email list, too. I had an email list.
Smart.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. Mm-hmm. You are now the second of what we were saying earlier, 100 of these interviews that I've been on. Mm-hmm. The only other person that's ever brought up the importance of emails was Angela Gargano. Mm-hmm. She's a super smart, obviously. Tell me more about that. So like you were collecting emails via just people that you knew? Did you have like some sort of offer? Like how were you gathering these?
So what was wild, I don't know if you know Ben Settle. Yeah, he's like an email marketing guy. Eric turned me on to him, but basically a year prior to starting my business, I was like, okay, I'm going to start an email list.
A year prior?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's huge.
Yep. And so I started a daily email list where I did 5 emails a week. And it was a way for me to keep my mind fresh in terms of like my education, what I was delivering. I would research a topic. I mean, similar to like, I imagine what people do with podcasts. And I would just write, 1,000 words or so every day and just send it out to my email list and just put it as a thing on my link tree for my Instagram. And at that point that was building. So my email list was building. And then.
So were you using it as a blog post to convert back to your newsletter, or how were people getting on there?
Just via Instagram bio.
Okay. You just put it in there as your newsletter and you were regularly writing it. How were people finding it? Just that link? So you were posting content as well then, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to understand how that flow of like the journey goes for that, because I feel like that's something that I talk to a lot of creators about, and I know they struggle a lot with is like really anyone. I just had a consulting call with a client today about like that exactly what we're talking about is like, how do we create a very streamlined process for actually getting them onto an email list, right? Because it's so powerful and it's so useful. And like some people will use it as like a blog post that can drive back to their newsletter. Some people just create content. So just curious as to like what those steps were that you put in line to get them continuing to grow that list. But doing 1,000 words a day, oh my gosh, that's a lot of content.
Yeah. It actually, I have another story with that email list. Yeah. So I'll answer your first question. So when I was a trainer at the gym, I believe I had it in my link tree, free workouts. And so people were like, probably, oh, she's probably got some like cool on it workouts. And so when they clicked on it, they signed up for my email list.
Got it.
So that's
smart.
That's how I built a lot of it up. And then, so that email list, I stopped doing it every single day because it actually drove me into a bad habit of binge eating, actually, which sounds so wild.
Go on.
So I can be a little bit of a perfectionist, and I would sometimes wait until the very last minute to write this email. And I made a promise to myself that I would send it out every night at 9 p.m. So sometimes I would get done with my class on it at 8:30 p.m. And then I would go home and I would like sit in front of the computer. And I would be so stressed out, like trying to force myself into creativity. And I developed this gnarly habit of eating while I would write these emails. And the crazy thing about it is like these emails were about like healthy living and like nutrition. But I would just like eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. And yeah, it turned into like a full blown like eating disorder.
How did you work through that then? Or how did you start to figure out how to work back out of that routine?
So it wasn't just the email list. It was like stress in every facet of my life that drove this stress response, which when we experience stress, we develop like an appetite stress response too. Because back in the day in Paleolithic era, there were only 2 stressors: don't get eaten and don't starve to death. So as a human adaptation, we developed this thing called the appetite stress response, meaning when we feel stressed, sometimes that triggers our appetite to go up. So at night, when I would be really stressed, I would eat and eat and eat and eat. It's a crazy thing.
Makes a lot of sense, though.
Yeah, it does. This continued on for, I would say, like almost maybe a year or so, really bad. I ended up putting on a ton of weight, and it was like one of the darkest times in my life, honestly. I'm grateful for it, though, now. I read countless books. In the process, I was learning how to I went to school to become a nutritionist, but I didn't really learn the like habit coaching preventative stuff that I know now. So in taking a precision nutrition course and learning how to like start a business and coach people that way, I learned tools that help myself. And I also read a book called Never Binge Again, which made it stop overnight.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What was the punchline from that book that really clicked for you?
The guy who wrote it, his name's Dr. Glenn Livingston, he comes from a family of like 20 different psychiatrists. And he had struggled with binge eating, I believe, for 30 years. And everything that he had learned in school to become a doctor, it's inner child work, it's this. Like, he decided, like, none of that shit works. I'm going to go against the grain. And he developed this theory that he had a pig that lived inside of him. And all this pig cared about was binging. And this pig is not like an actual farm animal, but it's our lizard brain, which all of us have. And it's it's the most underdeveloped part of our brain that only cares about eating things, killing things, and having sex with things. And it's very impulsive and it's very hard to control. And so he realized that when he stopped listening to the pig squeal and caged the pig, that he would stop eating pig slop. And so I realized that all I had to do was just cage that pig and I wouldn't binge eat anymore.
How do you cage the pig?
In your mind, you realize that that's his only mission. And the more you listen to him, the more pain you feel.
So it was about putting language around the feelings and the experiences around it so that you'd actually make a better decision around it.
Yeah, it was about separating that noise from me.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Mindset by Carol Dweck?
No.
So I've heard you talk about how you used to think you were dumb.
Yes.
So, and the reason I bring this up is because like that book obviously fundamentally changed you in the way you just like see and experience the world. Mm-hmm. Carol Dweck's Mindset did the exact same thing for me. And the reason I bring this up is because like I said, I've heard you talk about saying that you used to think you were dumb. That was me 1,000%. Mm-hmm. I was actually literally just talking about this, how I literally barely graduated high school, like barely. I think I had like a D+ when I graduated high school. Couldn't even get into university. Eventually got into a community college, and then like long story short, ended up going to undergrad, graduate school, graduated grad school with like a 4.0. But in that intern, that you're like that mindset shift from that book was literally the game changer that changed everything about my life. Because like prior to that, when I was in second grade, I used to have a teacher that she would always send me to the star room. And so the star room was essentially like where kids that just like couldn't do work in the classroom, or essentially where the dumb kids went, right? And that taught me at a really young age that I had what Carol Dweck would call a fixed mindset, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard. And it's basically just that belief that like, this is who you are. There's nothing you could do about it. You were just born that way, which is wrong, right? But I believed it fully to my core. And it wasn't until I read that book, Carol Dweck Mindset, where she talks about a growth mindset and everything else that goes with that, where it like literally fundamentally changed me in that moment in a one sentence of like, oh, I get it. Now that I have a language to understand the life that I've been living and how much that makes just a difference. And that's why I've always found like any sort of podcasts or books or any sort of content of that matter just so fascinating, is like the right words in the right order can fundamentally change you. And it's cool to see like that happen for you with a pig that just wants to
totally
eat a bunch of crap, basically.
Yeah.
So once you figured that out, like what did you change about your routine in your life? And like, how have you structured, are you still writing a daily newsletter at this point?
No, not daily.
Okay.
So what he does in the book is he also says you need to create rules for yourself in order to keep the pig away. And what I realized is that majority of my binge eating was happening at night in front of the computer, because I was mindlessly eating. I was so focused on writing emails that I would just eat and eat and eat. So my rule number 1 was never, ever, 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 ever eat in front of a screen again. And I had to take this very seriously. No phones. If we went to a sports bar or like whatever, I would like turn. If I was at a friend's house, I'd say, hey, can you turn off the TV? Like I cannot be eating in front of a screen.
Are you still that way?
No. Yeah, I can handle it now. I of course prefer to like not eat in front of a screen.
Sure.
But yeah, that was rule 1.
So you had to figure out the cue that was essentially triggering you to just like binge eat over and over again.
Yep.
Interesting. I'm sure you probably use that a lot with the clients that you work with now as well.
Yeah,
Understanding
for sure.
the cues that trigger certain behaviors. I've always been interested in that too, is like just how our environment kind of plays us like a fiddle. of like the people and the places and the things that we experience and see obviously has a profound impact on the decisions that we make. So what's kind of your routine now for some of that content creating piece? Because obviously that was a huge pillar, and I want people to really take that away from this of how you've grown this list, and like obviously that's helped a lot with the business, I'm sure, as it is today. What's that routine look like now? Are you batching, or how would you recommend somebody create a system like that where they can to continue to create content on a regular basis?
LOL. So right now, I let it go to the wayside, but I am huge on accountability. And so I have a bet with one of my current clients, and it's a 2-way bet. I basically gave him an assignment for a 30-day discipline challenge, similar to 75 Hard. I was like, okay, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. Okay? And because you're going to stay accountable, I'm also challenging myself to 30 days of showing up on Instagram every day talking into the camera. If I mess up, I'm going to pay you $350.
Oh, damn.
If you mess up, you're going to pay me $350. And I haven't quit since.
How many days in are we?
16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty confident you're going to knock this out?
I effing hate it. But not all the time. It's really gotten me to become more myself on camera, which I do enjoy. Just, I hate being forced into creativity. I think that's kind of the opposite of creativity. Like, not meant to be forceful, you know?
Sure. I mean, I guess sort of, though, because, like, regardless of whether you want to do it or have to do it, either way, the things that come out of every person is a creative outlet of themselves, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, because you're a unique human with unique experiences and a unique perspective. And so regardless of, like, forced or not, like, it's still you. Right? I mean, you have 2 cameras in front of you right now. Like, how does that feel?
It reminds me of, have you ever seen Garden State?
Oh,
you haven't? Okay, wait, and get the reference.
What's Garden State?
It's a movie.
Oh, okay.
Okay. She's like basically does this like finger thing to like make herself feel unique in that moment. I don't know. Might want to cut that out. if you'd seen the movie, you'd get it.
I'm sure somebody listening to the show has seen the movie. So
okay.
Just even if I don't get it, someone's going to be like, yeah, got that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would say having some sort of accountability system around content creation is great.
Yeah, I have a good buddy of mine who he literally invites people over to his house just to like sit behind him and like watch his screen just to make sure that he's actually working and he's not just like fucking around and doing something else on his computer. So he literally co-works with people just so they can watch his screen, and so he continues to do it.
Wow.
It's kind of clever, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's continue that journey. So you have this accountability system now.
Yes.
Let's kind of move forward things a little bit of like where you see things moving forward, because that's a common question that I get on the show is like people are always curious as to like, cool, you were able to learn about entrepreneurship, you started your business, you're doing it now for, it's been what, 2 years?
3 in
years?
February, yeah.
Okay, 3 years. And where do you see things moving forward, or like what's kind of on the horizon for you?
Yeah. So 2020 was my very first year in business, and I was like, just making it work. And then 2021, I quadrupled my income. Everything was awesome. And then 2022, I started making like big investments. And then I also noticed quite a bit of a slowdown too. And I don't know if it's just like recession related or like Instagram algorithm related, whatever. Well, I had this moment where I started like feeling really desperate online, like, on Instagram, and I would log on and I would look at people and they seem really desperate. And I was like, oh, I don't like this energy. So I actually ended up getting a couple part-time jobs just to, in the same realm of what I do in the health and wellness space, just to supplement my income.
Sure.
And it's been such a blessing too, I would say, because I'm not, before where I used to put a lot of pressure on people in my sales calls to like move forward with the call, I didn't want that type of energy anymore. And I also didn't want to be the person, like I do body transformation work. I do not want to be sending people DMs like, hey, like calling them out basically, like,
hey, buy my stuff.
Buy my stuff. Like,
right.
I do this, because it's pretty insulting. And I had someone get offended. Not to say that everybody does, But, I don't know. I wouldn't want somebody to reach out to me and say, hey, like, you look like you could, like, change the way that you look,
Looks like you could lose 50 pounds.
Yeah.
Let's work together.
Yeah. So I would say that has been really cool because the jobs that I work now have really been able to help me beef up my offer. And it's also taking that in a new direction as well.
Yeah, it gives you essentially the backbone to be able to just like take on bigger clients maybe and to be able to say no to people that ultimately don't align with you.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a huge deal. That's a side note. I kind of got into dog sitting for that reason.
Okay.
Like Rover or like Wag.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally do a bunch of that now for two reasons, because it's fun, but also it's like sweet, a few extra bucks in my pocket so I don't have to worry as much.
Yeah. And so I would say, like, for anybody else who is an entrepreneur and they just kind of feel like they're in this like financial hamster wheel, every month on the first, you're basically at zero again or whatever. Get a part-time job in a way that you want to expand what you already do.
Totally. Or invest in some way, because like you mentioned that briefly of like you started investing more into the business. What did you invest in and what did you learn from that, or what could you maybe recommend to others?
So I invested in a business coach, which has been great. I would say that was the most expensive thing.
Totally.
And I also invested in some paid groups in Austin. Just, like female entrepreneurial groups, the Young Women's Alliance. And so getting plugged into those communities with shared values has been wonderful and also a great lead source. I had one of my friends, her and I decided to like wedding crasher style network this one month. And we just went to like a bunch of these events and we noticed that they were just like women in tech. And we'd show up and we would have nothing really in common with these people. The conversations were really forced. A lot of them were like free. And it was just a total freaking waste of time, to be honest. And so what I realized is there's a lot of value in these paid groups. And, some of them are $500 or more, but it's a great investment.
People don't value what they don't pay for.
I know.
Which is a conversation I have to have with my clients all the time. Because like all my clients are people in the health and fitness and wellness space. And it's the biggest challenge for a lot of them because most people get into that space because they want to help people. And they aren't generally that money driven. They're more driven by just like serving humanity, which is awesome. But they underestimate the fact of like people don't value what they don't pay for. And so they're just like, they're all savants, right? They're all trying to give away everything for free, which is unfortunate because like when you do charge what you're worth, it doesn't mean gouge people, but when you charge what you're worth, like both people win.
Yeah.
The client and the person providing the service win in that scenario.
Totally.
I have a round of rapid fire questions for you.
Let's go.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Best business advice.
Don't charge by the hour, charge by the transformation.
Ooh. Can you just drop that microphone for me? No, I'm just kidding. It's expensive. Don't do that.
Okay.
Best marketing advice.
Treat your Instagram like a business card.
Oh, okay. I've never heard that one. That's good. Favorite part about entrepreneurship?
No ceilings.
When are you the most productive?
When I'm not multitasking.
Who is your inspiration?
My future self.
Wow, these are good. Did I send you these beforehand?
No.
Tell me one secret about you or something most people don't know about you.
I grew up in a house with over 200 snakes.
Okay, you got to tell me that. What does that mean? You bred snakes?
My grandparents did, yeah. So my parents were 16 when they had me, also another thing. And so we had to live with my grandma for a little bit. And her boyfriend of 30 years had this reptile breeding company. And they did it out of the garage. And they would sell these like rare frogs from Costa Rica for like $500. And then they had iguanas and snakes and then a gator.
Okay, so you lied because you said Eric was the first experience with entrepreneurship. That was for sure your first experience with entrepreneurship.
That's true. I didn't think about Bathsheba Herbs.
Yeah. What?
That was the name of the company.
Oh, what's it called?
Bathsheba Herbs. Herpetology is the name for like reptile.
Oh, I thought herpes. I was like...
no. It's for like the study of reptiles and amphibians.
Okay, just really quickly, because obviously we're in rapid fire question round. But like, what did you learn from that? Did you learn anything from like that experience of growing up with reptiles and snakes and herps? Wait, hold on.
Yeah. You can make money doing anything, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great lesson to learn.
Yeah.
That's actually a very important lesson to learn. I think most people actually don't believe that, believe it or not. I think most people believe that their only way of income is to work for somebody else and to work a job, which is unfortunate that most people think that now. I think we're moving in a new direction, though, honestly. I see a lot more people, obviously, stepping away from that.
Yeah.
But I digress. What would you change about yourself?
I have an obsession with time.
Efficiency? Or what do you mean?
I just always like need to know what time it is.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that why you wear a watch?
It's where I wear a watch.
How many times a day do you check your watch?
A lot.
Really?
Yeah. All the time. Yeah. Yes. But even I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, oh, what time is it? You know, I just always want to know.
Any idea why? Any inkling, I guess?
I think when you are, or I'll speak for myself, because I have so much responsibility in my life, I feel like I'm constantly on a schedule.
I feel that I've kind of accepted that everything I ever want to do is just going to take longer than I expect. That's something I've come to realization with, of like, especially as anybody who's doing their own thing, is you very quickly realize is like, you can make a checklist that's, 10 long, and the odds are you're going to get 2 of them that day. Like, I've just accepted the fact of like, most things on my list will take longer than I want it to.
Yeah.
Unless you start hiring and all the other stuff that goes into it, which I don't want to do. But
yeah.
What's your favorite app or resource right now?
Apple Podcasts.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Favorite podcast? What do you got?
Ooh,
You can name this one if you want. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I've got 2. So I love the Chris Harder show.
Sure.
Do you know him?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love how he talks about money. I love how inspiring he is. And then Andrew Huberman, or the Huberman Lab.
Sure. So do you follow Lori then as well? Lori Harder?
I love Lori Harder.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
They're, I'm pretty sure they're from Minnesota.
They are.
Yeah, that's where I'm from.
Yeah.
So they used to be at a lot of like the networking MLM type stuff.
Michigan, actually.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah. Is that where the UP is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's where she's from.
Because they were in that area regularly. But when were you the happiest?
Walking into that show, going into Sydney, Australia, going to see Above and Beyond with Eric.
Wow, I hope he listens to this episode. That's
Yeah.
He'll appreciate that. Last one, favorite part about Austin, and I'm gonna preface this as you can't say the people, because 9 times out of 10 that's people's answers, which it's correct. I would agree, it's the right answer, but you're not allowed to because everybody says that answer.
Got it.
Okay.
The amount of entrepreneurship here.
Okay. All right. Well done.
Can I say that?
Yeah, that works.
I would not be doing this if it weren't. I wouldn't have lasted this long.
Because of the community and people that are like, keep going kind of deal.
Yeah, I just feel like I know at least 10, 20 entrepreneurs. And I feel like if I were to go to any other city, I wouldn't know that many. I'd be like, this is hard. I'm just getting a job.
Totally. No, I feel that a lot. I think about that actually a lot from back home in Minnesota. I always use the horrible analogy that I feel like I grew up as a dog in a city of cats. And then I got to Austin and everyone was a dog. And I was like, oh, like this is way more fun. Like these are my people.
Yeah.
Or dogs, I guess, or whatever the analogy is. But yeah, I think a lot about that. It's kind of the original point of like how our environment affects us. I have one more question before I ask that question though. I just want to acknowledge you and for showing up today and just being honest and obviously being a little feeling like you're out of your mood or jive and doing some awesome push-ups to get ready for this interview and just showing your true authentic self, and Austin's better for it and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. What's your plug before I ask this last question? Where can people find you?
My website, livinglargewellness.com.
Bingo. Final question. So I ask this for everybody on the show. Really what it is it's your best piece of advice. So if you were to go back some 3 years ago, talk to your former self or even anybody else in that stage of like they want to start a nutrition business or really any sort of business or side hustle for that matter, what's maybe the best piece of advice you could give to them just to kind of get started and maybe not play business but actually do business?
Hire a sales coach. That was the thing that really helped me skyrocket or quadruple my income. That's one. And then another thing is learn about money, because ultimately, of course, you want to make an impact, but without a customer, you don't have a business.
1,000%.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey friend, thanks for listening to the show. And if you have any feedback for me about the show or any other guests that you'd want to see in the show, definitely shoot me a message. I love engaging with my audience and figuring out how I can provide the best value possible to the people listening to this show. Before you go, I only have one ask of you, and that would be to check out my 3 Tips Tuesday newsletter. It's 3 marketing tips every Tuesday specifically for the health and fitness entrepreneur to help them attract new leads. If you press the link in the description, it'll take you directly to the archive of all my previous newsletters, and you can decide for yourself if it's something for you. If you end up finding it helpful, you can just sign up for the newsletter and you'll get it in your inbox every Tuesday. Thanks again, and keep hustling, my friends.